So today we'll be talking about AWS cost management and optimization. The goal is for us to be able to. So if you think about in the last 3 months, 4 months, I've been on this platform teaching, talking about all the beautiful things that you can build, but all that will not make sense without you keeping track of your costs. So cost management, managing your cost, and also optimizing. You don't want to just spend money because the cloud is there for you to spend the money. Sometimes it's good you spend the money wisely. So what it means is that you have to continue to manage your infrastructure. You have to continue to optimize. You have to continue to look at patterns that will save you more money and give you the same result or even better result, right? So, which is what we're going to be looking at today. We're just going to be looking at all the things. So we'll see how you estimate. So if you wanted to start like a green project today, where will you start from? Especially when you don't know exactly how much it's going to cost. There is a way you can estimate that, right? We'll see billing dashboard. We'll see how you can set up like a billing alarm, how you can do costs anomaly with machine learning, and then service quota is something we are going to see, so that you see that yeah, in AWS there's quota. You can have like quota applied to your account, and you can also increase, have those limits increased. Okay, and then we'll see support plan, and then how you can actually optimize your resources. Okay. So why is cost management a challenge? It is a challenge because right now you're working with one account. So most times you work with just one account. But in the real world, like I always say, in a production setting, you have multiple accounts spread across different organizations. We've talked about an organization before. So sometimes maybe prod has like 10 accounts. Remember, an account is a central place for workloads, right? So it means that one account will host so many things: database, EKS, EC2 machines, ECS, and all that. So there's so many services running across these different accounts. Now the thing is that when you now have those many accounts in many places, like you now have multiple accounts that host several services, it now means that you need to now find a way to manage your costs, right? Because you've grown in complexity in terms of like the accounts you use. There's not so many accounts to keep an eye on, right? So that you want to be on top of things. So pay as you go, we've seen that's how it works in the cloud, right? So, but you need to still monitor whatever you're doing in the cloud just to make sure you're spending wisely, right? You're spending as you know. So one of the challenges is easy to overspend. I think people have come to this call and be like, "Oh, I left one machine running." If you don't put the right strategy in place, you can run into issues like that. You can leave resources running unintentionally, and that can result into costs, unused, underutilized resources, right? Sometimes you're just using things that pretty much you're not utilizing them. You're just paying. You're just wasting the resource. It's not like you're there. So there are better ways to go about that. So when you think about some of the common cost challenge, lack of visibility is one of the problems. You're not looking, you're not seeing, you're not proactive, you're not really taking a look. So that's one of the problem. You're also not tracking costs. You're not seeing who is spending what. And that's why we've talked about AWS organization, because in the real world you have like department, you have product. You can basically you can have costs grouped by a team, for example, and be able to see how much is a team spending, how much is a product costing you, and all that. So all that is what you can do with cost attribution to teams or to projects, right? Um, Obviously, people have seen unexpected bill. You leave something running, you get the bill. Yeah. And then over provision instances and storage. So what is the AWS solution? All these are problems that I've just mentioned. But when you look at it, what's the solution? Comprehensive cost management tools. AWS has a lot of them, and which is what we're going to be seeing. Proactive monitoring and alerting, that really helps. And then optimization, right? You can follow many of the recommendations that are given to you. Sometimes you figure them out, but sometimes there are really tools you can look at that can recommend and tell you, if you do it this way, it will be cheaper and you can get almost the same benefit, right? So that brings us to the first service. I don't know how many people know of this service, but there's actually a pricing calculator. The whole idea is that let's assume you want to move to the cloud and you're not exactly sure what it's going to translate to. The good news is that there is actually a tool called a pricing calculator. The whole idea is, and I'll show you what that looks like. But it means it's just a web-based tool for cost estimation. The point is, you go there, put the service you're interested in, the region you want to use it. You fill in some parameters, and it can give you an estimated guess of like how much it's going to cost you, right? So you don't need to have an AWS account to use it. It's a web tool. You can create estimates, free to use, accessible to all. It's basically calculator.aws. That's the website. Okay. So the good thing is that you can do more or less like your estimates before deploying, right? You want to build something, but you're not exactly sure what it's going to cost you. You don't even have an AWS account yet. You're just thinking, is the cloud going to work for me? You can use a calculator to basically model your costs, right? So you can model different architectural scenarios. That's exactly what I had here and that I've written here. And then you can obviously export some of those estimates, right? So the use case, you want to do budget planning for new projects, cost justification for cloud migration. It's not even just for new projects. Sometimes you're working already. You have a project, but you want to use like a different service. And cost calculator is just one fast way for you to more or less like just see what it's going to cost you from moving from this solution to this. Remember, we've also talked about re-architecting. Honestly, that will never stop. Sometimes you are using a legacy system and you want to use something more modern, and you are trying to see, although I'm moving to this new solution, but is the cost? Sometimes cost is one thing that stops people from moving, right? Changing solutions. So sometimes you have to go through that exercise to see if the cost is justified. Like, is this something you are willing to take on? So that's what you can get, and you can obviously use that to compare deployment options, right? So if you don't know that tool, I'm just going to type AWS calculator so that you see what it looks like. It's basically here. So you can see its pricing calculator. I'm not logged into. I don't need to be in my account to do that. You can just go and create an estimate, right? So you basically can go there. You can create an estimate, and services differ based on the region, right? I think you know that by now that services they differ based on the region. So you can actually choose a region like US West 2, which we have been working with for the most part. You can do EC2, for example. So if I type EC2, you can see Amazon EC2. If I try to configure it, and if you're paying attention, you see that right now there's like a summary down there that says view summary. You see right now, there is, I think it's showing $1.53, but I don't know whether, okay, because I think maybe there's like one instance. You can look for number of VPs. I think here is doing T4G nano, but you can increase that size and see, you can see how the price is changing here, right? So you can pretty much look at the service, look at everything that is configurable for that service. So in this case, you can see if you went with a savings plan, if you did on demand, if you did spot instances, what that price is going to translate to. So for example, let's do a savings plan, and let's do let's say 1 year partial upfront, right? Or let's even say no upfront for 1 year, and you can see the price. In this case, I think in the default we're using, that's why it looks a bit cheaper, right? Because we're using 3-year plan and no upfront. So if we do 3 years plan here, you see that this is 5033, and then if we go back here, for example, and we do exactly what we're doing, it's this, right? And then if you do on demand, obviously that probably might cost you more money. You can see, and this is one of the reasons in several calls we've talked about so many of these savings plan and how you can use them to reduce your cost, right? So that's basically the cost calculator. It's a service you can use to pretty much any service you want to work with. You can go there, put the service in, and put in some of the parameters that you care about, and it's going to give you like a cost, right? So that brings us to the billing dashboard, right? So for so many people who already have an account, who's already using an account, you should have seen a billing dashboard, your billing dashboard, right? So if you go to Cost Explorer, it's like the home page you see that tells you exactly how your cost, like how you're doing with cost, right? So centralized view of your AWS cost, real-time cost and usage information is what you see there. And the beauty of it is you can actually see your current month cost, right? Your month to month. You can see how it's, your month-to-month comparison. You can actually see that trend. And then obviously, if you want to drill down, you can basically drill down, break the cost down by service to see how a service is costing you. You can also use the forecast feature to see, like projected end of month cost if you continue using exactly what you're using right now. So if you have an AWS account, that is already available for you. And then if in AWS, actually a lot of things are controlled by IAM permissions, right? So you can actually have users and restrict them from saying billing, doing anything around billing, right? And you can also have users, maybe like the FinOps users that we talked about, and say those ones, they have like the billing permission to see billing and do things with billing, okay? So I'm just going to go here. This is really, if I go to cost management, for example, so these things are good so that you can move around and see, what it is. But this is my dashboard. You can see month to date cost. This is what I've spent because I did something in between. But you can see forecasted. There's no, because this was a one-time spend. That's why this is pegged here, right? But if this was something that was identified as something that I'm spending, regularly, you would see the forecasted like month end cost for me, right? But you can see the cost breakdown. You can see May, all this month I didn't spend, and then in October I had like a bill. Other than that, there's so many beautiful information that you can see from just looking at the dashboard, right? So you can see some trends given to you, all right? The things that decrease, the things that and then you can also see saving opportunities if you're interested to see how you can save based on what you are doing, right? So this is really the homepage. If you go to dashboard, yeah, you can obviously create a dashboard, but what I was talking about in that slide is really the homepage, which is this one, right? That gives you basically just a breakdown. Some people just every day when they start their day, sometimes they just check this UI to just make sure things are working, right? So it's a page you get used to, because yeah, sometimes just looking at this page, you can see, for example, there was an anomaly that was identified here, so just looking at the dashboard, you can get some pretty much nice information to work with. Okay, so let's continue. We're just going to be looking at them one after the other, so that you see a lot of the cost tools that you can use, right? So that brings us to Cost Explorer. Cost Explorer for me, I think, is like one of the most important, because that's really the one you'll be using for the most part. And the whole idea is that sometimes you would see your costs go up, whether you know why it went up or you don't know, right? But if you really want to drill down, that's where Cost Explorer comes in. So whether you're a developer, a DevOps engineer, in as much as you're dealing with an AWS account and you have access to the billing to do this, this is one of the most critical places, right? So even if you think about the FinOps people, they're basically going there. Sometimes they're actually trying to see what is different from yesterday versus today. Yesterday we were paying $20, so today we're paying $50. What changed, right? It's cost. You can see that easily with Cost Explorer. I'm going to show you how you can play with those filters and get the result you are looking for. But what is it? It's basically a visual cost analysis tool. Nice graph that you can see that tells you trend and everything that you care about. Well, one of the beautiful feature in there is basically filter. The fact that you can filter, you can narrow things down. And this brings us to why tag. People have asked me on this call before, why do you need to tag? This is one of the reasons, because in Cost Explorer, you can basically use tags to filter down to find any resource and see how much it's costing you, right? So you can see the cost trend and anomaly. So one of the common use cases is really to identify costs. Like if you go into your account and you're trying to narrow down, it's not just seeing your overall cost, but sometimes you want to see which service is giving you that cost, and which entity in that service. Sometimes you're also interested, for example, in one service, there might be different operations, and some will cost more than some, right? So sometimes you're not just interested in the service, but within the service, you're also interested in the operation that happened for that service. Okay, and when I show you an example, it will make sense. And then you can track your spending over time. Okay, so we're also going to look at that. Remember, this is like we're wrapping we're wrapping up the class, and it's good you really see all the cost tools that you have available, just to make sure you keep your account, and you can keep your account, you can monitor your account basically, right? Remember, these tools that I'm showing you right now, they're still reactive. You're looking at graph, you're looking at dashboard, but in the real world, we'll still also talk about how you can set up alerts, so that you don't have to really go to the dashboard. You can have alert inform you when something is not right, and you can pretty much take action, right? That's the right way to go. But if you look at this, is really, so we were here before, now I'm back to I'm in Cost Explorer. One of the beautiful things you can see granularity. For example, on the right, you can do monthly. Right now it's showing me monthly, but I can actually see daily to see how I've done in the last couple of days. So it's going to break the graph down. You can see for the last couple of days, there's really nothing. I'm not spending anything. But you can also filter based on date. For example, let me scroll up a bit. My laptop is a bit slow right now, but if I do this, you can do maybe like in the last 7 days, or month to date, right? But one of the things I was really trying to show you on that slide is that you can do dimension, right? So now it's breaking it by service. Sometimes maybe you want to break by tag. You want to break. Right now I don't really have tags done, but these resources that you spent money on, you can actually break the cost down by tag, right? That's why tagging is important, because when you tag your resource, you can basically also track them with tag, not just the service. You can also use tag to find them. Outside finding by tag, you can pretty much pick a service that you're interested in. For example, if it's EC2, you can just find that service and see whatever the cost is. You can see it's nothing. But there is also one thing that you can also do that is pretty much nice. So you do many of these dimensions, right? Outside the dimensions, the filters. But one thing is you can also filter by like by tag, right? So you can actually not the cost category, but you can also filter. Right now, I don't really have like a tag to filter on. I don't have, but if you have like a tag, you can filter. And there is also one feature that I love the most. Is something that you're going to see. Right now there is a dimension called tag. I'm going to clear it, and I'm going to use a dimension called usage type, right? So the beautiful thing about usage type is that it's very, very important. It's not looking at the service themselves. It's also going down to see for that service, what were you using, right? So for example, if you scroll down, you can see things like public IP idle address, things like NAT gateway hours. That is really drilling down. These are all things that sometimes it can be under EC2, for example, but with a usage type is one of the most important dimension for me, because I feel sometimes you're not just interested in the cost for RDS. You're also interested in what usage, what are you using inside of RDS that's giving you this cost. So that's where usage type comes in. Because sometimes some people be like, oh, this service is costing, but what are you using inside of that service that is costing you that much? So you can see everything in AWS, whether it's data transfer in bytes or out bytes, regional bytes, there's a lot of like cost category types that you see. And sometimes also as part of your growth, you'll be seeing which is which, what is contributing to what does it mean for you to say data transfer in or data transfer out, right? As you begin to work with AWS service, these things will become more, you begin to understand them, and then it will be easy for you to actually not just care about the service, how much the service is costing you, but you also be interested in like what are you using in that service that is costing you that amount. Okay. So Cost Explorer is there. It's really nice. Like you can really do all these things. There's so many filters here that you can play with. And you can check by availability zone. You can do all this wonderful stuff. And it's always that place where whether you're FinOps, you're basically trying to see trend, right? Trend tells a story, because for example, if you have like a graph and everything is quiet, and after like 2-3 days you see like there's a trend that shows cost is going up, right? That is when you're asking question, what change went to production? What did we release? What's that new feature that went out? It's also a way for you to checkmate. Sometimes developers just build the release application, but sometimes those things come with a cost increase, and graphs like this can show you a pattern to see, oh, last week everything was calm, what about this week, what went into production? Okay, so Cost Explorer is that tool. Okay, let's continue. It's honestly, if you play with that UI, you're going to get comfortable with, but it's something you have to get used to. Okay, cool. Let's continue. So after Cost Explorer, what's the next thing? Cost Allocation Tag. The whole idea is that for Cost Allocation Tag, remember that you have so many services that you're working with, and those services will have tags, right? But all those tags, we can't track all of them, right? When you do cost analysis, you can't really, and that's why there's cost allocation tag. The point is that you need to specifically, do more or less like create the tags that you want to track, basically, right? So even if you have like 1,000 tags, it doesn't matter. The ones that appear in cost allocation tag are really the ones that you're going to be using for your cost and usage report. Okay, so that's just so you know, it's basically the tag you're setting aside for you to that will appear in your cost and usage report. Okay, so it's used to organize and track your costs. So it's really people tag for many reasons, but when you're interested in the one that has to play alongside your cost and usage report, that's where allocation tags, cost allocation tag comes in. There are two types AWS generated. You see them, it starts with AWS, and the one that is user, obviously you can define your own tags, right? And it is. It just depends on the grouping you want, whether you want to group by environment, production, dev, QA, whatever environment you have, or you want to also break down by team to see if this is engineering or this is sales team, and see which team is spending the most money, right? So it just depends. You best practice, use consistent naming convention, tag resource when you create them, right? And that's why in some organizations it's like a tagging strategy. There's like minimum tags that you must have, because those tags are important to track the cost. So usually when you create a resource, you can have like a tag policy that says if it doesn't have this tag, you can't create this resource, right? You can comfortably do those even with SCPs that we've talked about at an org level. Okay, so owner, project, cost center, those are beautiful tags that you can use. And then you have to actually activate them, right, for them to actually work. Okay, so let's see if we can find what cost allocation tag looks like in the AWS account. So let's see, you can see it here, cost allocation tag is here. So if you look closely, you see user defined tags, but you can see a lot of them are inactive. So it means that You can have tags. It doesn't mean they would appear in that cost and usage report, right? So there are some AWS generated ones, right? So these are AWS, and then there is like user ones. Usually, most times, if you really want a tag to be tracked, you have to activate it, right? This is one of the issues some people they face, where they have tags and they be like, oh, I can't really report on this tag. You have to activate it for that to work, right? So what it means is that basically you activate, and now this tag becomes important. It's something you can track in your cost and usage report. So cost allocation tags is very, very important when you're dealing with this. It's easy to find. You'll see tags appear here. You just basically need to activate the ones that you want to show up in your cost and usage report. Okay, cool. That's also one nice service we've seen. Just know this one is really going to help you with organizing, being able to track what because if for example a cost center, you can say a cost center is a tag. Maybe there's a cost center called a project called export or something, whatever you call it. It's good for you to be able to narrow down what that cost center is, what is costing you, right? So tagging is your strategy, however you want to tag. But project, owner, environment, those are nice tags that you can use, right? These things make sense if you start dealing with big organizations, right? And which is where this is the target. I don't expect you to do what you're doing, continue to work with just a single account, right? In big organizations, these things become very, very important, and you see them as time goes on, right? Cost and usage reports, also one very fantastic service. So if you think about it, so all the costs that you see in the cost dashboard that we've seen, you can actually get it as a report, and it's actually what is called cost usage report. So it's called CUR for short. So it's the most comprehensive AWS cost and usage data. The point is that you can't fetch that data. So that data you're seeing in the graph, you can request it from AWS and actually you do something else with it if you want, right? So if you want to plug it to your own application to do further analysis, or you want to plug it to a third-party tool for further analysis, also to tell your cost, you can, right? So the data is going to break down everything for you, how your spending is happening within your account. Okay, so detailed line item billing information. So if you really want to see that breakdown, you can see it in your cost usage report, right? You can publish it to S3, and you know how it is. When it gets to S3, it means that you can from there put it inside your application, or export it to use it in an external tool. Cube Cost is one of those very nice tools. You will see at some point. It just depends on how you're tracking cost. But there's a tool called Cube Cost. So Cube Cost usually will work like with the cost usage report data for it to really help you and give you more or less like another kind of UI where you can see your cloud spend, right? So it's very, very good. So you can see all the service usage details. You can see resource IDs, the tags that were applied, the cost allocation tag that we just talked about. So there's so many information, important information in that cost usage report. Okay. The point is that if it's in S3, you can load it to Athena. I think we've discussed that before, right? So you can just quickly query it. Sometimes you are actually interested in a particular line item, so you can actually do that. You can import that you can import that same data to QuickSight if you wanted to do your own visualization on top of that, right? And then, like I said, you can feed it to a third-party tool. Okay, so let's see what that will look like. I think they've done some modernization around that too. Before it used to be cost and usage report, but I think it's now called what is it called? It's now called data export. So just so you know, if you're watching this video, so it used to be you can see data export enables you to create exports of the cost and usage reports 2.0. So there was a change basically, but before it used to be called cost and usage report, but now it's data export, right? So the point is that you can actually go and say you want to create an export, and the one that I did mention in the slide is what is called cost and usage report, but that's really legacy, right? But now there's like more kind of options that you have available now. But the point is that if we were to go with the legacy export, for example, you will put the name, you will choose the things you want. How often do you want that to be broken down? The time granularity, the reports, the integration you want to have. Like I did mention, you can have Athena. You know what Athena is. So if you give it an S3 data, you can basically just query that. And then the compression type, you configure like an S3 bucket where it's going to go to. And when it gets there, you can basically import it to your Athena or your tool, and you can do your own more or less like queries on top of that data, right? So just so you know, data export is the same as cost usage report. The point is you can export your cost data, right, outside, and then like if you export it to S3, it's just like you're taking it out for further analysis, right? Depends on what you want to do. You can even build your own UI that uses that data for something, right? and then you can make sure that S3 is always updated with that data, and then you can use it. Okay, cool. It's there. You basically can see it and see some of the things that, but just know it's just you're just exporting a line item that says this is the amount that we're charged. So the same data you're seeing visualized in the cost explorer is the same data that will be given to you, and then you can do whatever you want to do with it. Cool. That is it in a nutshell. In That's just what cost. So it's a report. It's a report. It has just line by line data of your cost, and you can pretty much do a lot of things about it. Budget is just as it says, budget. I think at the beginning of this class, one of the things I made sure everyone did was to create a budget, right? We did create zero spend budget. We created the I think a $1 budget. We just created a set of budgets, right? So the whole idea is right now, before you know all the things I've been showing you, you're checking the dashboard, you're doing all these things there, but they're retroactive. You're just they are all not proactive, right? Ideally, you want to be notified. You don't want the situation whereby you spent one k, which something you budgeted 100, you spent 1k. That's where budget comes in. You can basically set budgets up for yourself and say, I want to keep my utilization around this level. And then if I ever go above it, it's going to send you a notification, right? So we've used that, but it's good we talk about it because it's one of those tools that you can actually use to keep your cost. We're still talking about cost management, right? And then optimization is part of that, but right now, this is also one of the ways you can manage your cost because if you can be notified when something is going wrong, um, if you can be notified when something is going wrong, it means you can take proactive steps, right? So set custom. So what is budget? Set custom cost and usage budgets, right? Set alerts. When you exceed those budgets, you're going to be alerted. It is proactive in this case, right? So it's not. It's really you being proactive. That's how it works in production, right? You can integrate with SNS. We've seen SNS. We've used SNS a lot on this call, so I think we've seen that how SNS integrates with a lot of services, right? We can basically do that, right? And then obviously there are different budget types that you can do. Track, maybe you want to track the spending amount, or you want to track like a service usage, or there are many kinds of budget you can create. But it's all the fact that you're just creating a budget to be able to tell you when something goes wrong. And then you can also have whether you want to track actual cost or you want to check forecasted cost, or you can even have multiple threshold, right? So I think we've seen it for those who joined. Probably maybe you were not there at the beginning when we created, but there's budget that is here. It's a tool. You can create a budget. There is customized, advanced, but you can maybe use a template that is simplified. I think we've done like zero spend budget, which is what I always encourage people. If you're new to AWS, said this, you're just saying, if your spending ever goes to 001, please let me know, right? But you can also do monthly cost budget. You can do daily savings plans, coverage budget. You can do daily reservation, utilization budget. There's so many things you want to do, right? But if you do my zero spend budget, you can put an email that is going to receive a notification if you go above that budget. It says you're going to be notified. You can put an email here and say test at email.com, right? So you can have that, and then you can basically create a budget. And if you wanted to go customized, you can basically begin to set up your own custom budget if you didn't want to go with some of the, what do you call it, some of the template that is there. So you can do cost budgets. There's usage budget, reservation budget, and there's also savings plan. But let's say I want to go with cost budget, you can basically give it a name. You can give it an amount. You can say if it's recurring budget, something that is recurring. There's so many things. When do you want to start it? And budgeting method, is it fixed? Is it planned? You can enter the amount. In that case, it was 0.01, right? But you can set up your cost. You can see here is all AWS services, but you can filter, right? You can filter based on the service. You can add a filter. Honestly, this UI, some of them, if you don't go in there, you won't know they exist. But honestly, there's so many things you can do, right? You can apply the filter, and then you can see whether it's on blended cost, amortized. These are all different kinds of costs you can keep track of. And then when you're done, you can basically see more or less like a preview to see, where you stand, and if it goes beyond that, what it's going to give you, and then you can just do next and save, and you'll be notified when anything happens, right? So let's see if let's just see some of the options. So let's just say test budget, okay? Some of these things you can't really test them because now you want the cost to go above that, right? But most of the times I don't spend money on this account, so there's no way I can see. But let's just say monthly. Let's say it starts October, it's fixed. Let's say we don't. Let's say we're just doing 0.01. Let's say all AWS service for now. It says recommended on blended cost. You can do next. You can target, you can do alert threshold, right? And that's where I talked in the slide where you can do multiple threshold, right? So you can do add alert. You can have multiple threshold basically, and then, but for now, let's just have just one, and just do tests at email.com. You know, just do this, and then are you looking at the actual or forecasted, right? So it's either it's the actual cost that is you're keeping track of, or maybe like looking at the forecasted cost, right? So let's do next and see if it lets us go. You can add an action. So that's one beautiful thing also, right? You can have an IAM rule. There's just so much you can do. You can have an IAM rule that action is going to use, and it can actually take an action, right? So because you set a budget, maybe you want to take an action for if that alert is breached, right? So there's so many things you can do with budgeting. But this year you can create budget. So I'm not going to spend time on that. It's easy to get along with if you need it. Okay, so just so you know. So let's continue. Because there's a lot to talk about on this call, so I don't want to really stay on one. I just want to introduce everything to you so that you can pretty much continue to exploit, right? There's also the billing alarm. I mean, AWS doesn't really, yeah, people, I don't know how many people still use billing alarm, but it's there. It's a feature that is there. The point is that you can use CloudWatch to actually alarm when you go above, I think we've seen alarm. We've used alarm on this call before, right? When we're dealing with some things around EC2. But you can also set one for cost, right? So it's simple. It's a simple alerting system. It's not as complex as some of the ones we've seen, like when we look at budget, right? But it's still legacy approach, which is what I'm saying. So the budget that we saw has more features to play with than just using a billing alarm. But I'm going to show you how that is and how it works, right? But it's still useful for basic cost monitoring if you want to go that route, right? Just so you know, that alarm can only be created in US East 1. We'll see that because that's where your cost data is. So, and then you can do estimated charge. So that's actually the metric you're keeping track of, right? So like I said, it's legacy. If you're still using it today, I'm not sure why, but budget really gives you more of the options that you want to play with, right? You can see it only monitors on the total account charges. You can't really filter like the way we're filtering just now. We're trying to filter. We can filter to a service, but there you can't really do all that, right? And you can't do forecasting. You can't do automated action the way we were trying to set one up, right? So just so you know, it's good it's an option, but it's not something I want you to pretty much. So we're just going to go to CloudWatch. So I'm going to go to CloudWatch for that one. So I'll do cloud. Like I said, it's under CloudWatch, so it's not under cost, right? So I'm going to go to CloudWatch. So one thing you notice, because I was global, I'm back to US East 1. That's really where you're going to see it. So, and I'm going to show you. So if I go to alarms, so if I go to all, no, sorry, if we do, for example, let's say we want to create, there is like, if you scroll down to, where is it now? Billing, you see there is like a plate where you can actually create an alarm, right? But I'll try to go to US West 2 so that in case somebody is trying to test this and it's like, oh, I'm not seeing the option to do this, just know that you have to be in US East 1, right? That's where I am here. But if I go to US West 2, if you see here in alarms, there's nothing billing, right? So there's no billing here. There is if you go back to the old page, let me open here, you will not see billing. So just know that the billing information itself, that billing alarm, can only be seen in US East 1. Okay, so if I go here and I do billing and I do create an alarm, select the metric, you see the metric would, I think, no, this is not I'm actually trying to create a billing alarm, not this one. Where was I? So billing creates a billing alarm. Yeah, you can see it gives you the metric name as estimated charges. You can basically see, for example, I think this is similar to how you create alarm. You set a threshold, you put an amount that you're keeping track of, and then you create the alarm, right? But it's not as flexible to see if you can drill it down to like a service or drill it down. You can't do much. You're not as flexible as you are with AWS budget, right? So which is why it's always better. I don't think I've used, but it's good that it's still here, it's still supported. But some people might want to use it, but just know there are better ways to do it. Okay. But it's just the same way you create alarm. The only thing you're keeping track of is estimated charges. The currency is this. You can set a maximum or many of those statistics that we know, right? So, and then the period, I think it has to be 6 hours. You can't really go below. And then you can do the other things, whether it's greater, greater equal, lower, and then down this amount. If it does that, maybe you want to do something, right? Cool. That's pretty much it about creating like a billing alarm. It's similar to budget. Budget is more so. Budget is a best practice. It's a better way to do things than using a billing alarm. Okay. Cost anomaly detection, as the word says, is anomaly detection. So what it means is that sometimes maybe you know the things you are looking out for, but sometimes also maybe you're just interested in patterns. You want to see when you want to be notified when a pattern is breached, right? So that's where the anomaly comes in. Sometimes you just want to more or less like be able to detect when something is not normal. That's just the way it works, right? But in this case, it's still focused on cost, on the cost angle. So machine learning powered anomaly detection, it will automatically identify unusual spending pattern, right? And I'm going to show you that because even on my UI, there was one that was created for me, right? But you can create yours. So it looks at your historic, it's still machine learning. It has to look at historic spend. So it knows, so every day you spend $5, $5. If all of a sudden in a particular day you spend $100, that's like an anomaly, right? So you can be flagged. And then obviously we'll send you an alert to say we think something is not right. You probably want to check it, right? So anomaly detection is there. And then you can obviously do customizable alert threshold, right? And then, like with most things, you want to be notified, which is where SNS plays a very good role. You can send notification to SNS. Let's look at what that will look like. So we're talking about anomaly detection, right? Using machine learning. So if I go back to my dashboard, so if I go home where I was before, one thing you notice is that you see there is one here, right? So there is actually one that was detected here. I think this one was created. Like you can see total spend. It did tell me one anomaly detected, basically 100% above what I would usually spend, right? In this account, I don't really spend, but you can see there was one day I just spent 32 and it was like, an anomaly immediately. So there were some detected, but you can actually create your own cost monitor. So you can create, you can choose a cost category, you can name it, and then boom, that's it. So if you actually see the page, for example, you see that how it works. You create a monitor, a cost monitor, and then you view the detection history when it detects anything, right? And then you analyze the anomaly details. Like in this case, for example, you can see view one potential root cause. Let's see what it says. You can see it did say code build. I think maybe this one was when I did set in zero spend, right? But you can see total root cause impact 0.02. I mean, that's negligible, but at least it was able to tell me which service, and all that. So cost anomaly is there if you really want to, you really just want to make sure that, patterns that you don't like, that you're not very like patterns that you don't know when they show up, anomaly can basically detect them for you. Okay. Cool. Let's continue. So we're still cost management and we're just looking at all the tools that we can. And that brings us to service quota, right? So one thing you should know is that in your AWS account, usually everything is driven sort of like quota. The point is that maximum things you can do, like how many EC2 machines you can run, like how many VPCs you can create, all these things are there. And for some reasons, I mean, they are there also to protect you because because if they are not there and somebody goes into your account and they're just spawning things anyhow, it could affect you. So they're there. So sometimes you actually want to go above that limit and you can actually tell AWS, okay, I really want more of this, right? Which is where service quota comes in. So it's maximum values for AWS resources and services. It protects you from unexpected costs. We're still talking about cost management. So it protects you from unexpected costs, prevent accidental resource creation at scale, right? Somebody goes into your account and you're just spinning up stuff, right? You could have those quotas in such a way that you can't really do beyond something unless there's like a request for it, okay? Hard limits cannot be changed. Sometimes there is like hard limits, you can't change those, but soft limits are also there that you can change, right? So some examples, EC2, like number of EC2 per region, you can set that. VPC per region, you can also set that. Sometimes also you're testing, you're building, and then before you go live, you now start thinking about your requirements. And that's where it's good. You go to quota and then you start requesting more quota. If I know I'm going to need more VPCs, because I'm going to support a lot of, yeah, you pretty much will have to increase all that, right? So avoid production issues from hitting limits. It's one of the things you have to do with quota. And then you can also understand your resource constraint, right? So it's there in your account. Not a lot of people see that at the early stage, but it's a service. You can actually go to service quota. So the point is, they're there. They're basically there for you to guide, to more or less like just guide resource provisioning. But you can. You're an AWS customer. You should be able to. So if you go AWS services, let's look for EC2, for example. The point is that if you do compute, let me see. Yeah, so this is Amazon Elastic Compute. You will see, for example, you can see applied account level. There is this. You can see AMIs 50,000 default, utilization information and all that. But you can also see attachment per VPC. This doesn't look like we can change this one. You can see it's grayed out. But what if we want to do maybe clients, VPN? You can request. So what it means is that you can request increase an account level. So it tells you what is applied, what is the default, but you can actually increase it if you need it, right? But many of these services are here just to make sure that, so the maximum number of client VPN endpoints per region, but you can actually request an increase. Okay, cool. Just so you know, there is like the quota, and everything you have, there is like quota applied to it, but you can increase those quotas. Sometimes it's a soft limit, you can increase it, but sometimes also like a hard limit, you can't change it. Okay. Let's continue. Let's see how well we're doing with this slide. I think we're doing well. Let's continue. So we just talked about service quota, saying most of your services, they are bound by quotas, but you can increase them if it's a soft limit. For hard limits, it's just what it is, right? So let's now talk about support plan. So if you think about your account right now, you have a support plan. I think we all started with, so when we started creating our account at the beginning, we all created a basic support plan, right? So the point is, just so you know that when you start dealing with AWS, as you grow, you will think of your support plan, just for you to understand. You will think of your support plan critically, because if you're when you are developing is different from when you are now in production and you need help, right? Sometimes maybe you need something, you want AWS to help you with something. That's where support plan comes in, right? So technical assistance from AWS expert. That's really what it's all about. So faster response time for critical issues, depending on support plan you're using, access to best practice and guidance, depending on also on the support plan you're using, architecture and operational support. So it means sometimes you're having conversations around your architecture, where you are, and if you could do better, AWS can support you in that regard, right? It just depends on the support plan you are, right? If you think about it, when you start basic, there is free, but you can also move your way down to developer, business, enterprise. I think at this level, you need to really know some of the little details in some of these different plans, right? But the key difference is sometimes it's about how fast will AWS respond to you. So the response time will vary for the different plans. Communication channel will also vary, and then maybe access to like support staff, right? If you want AWS to dedicate an engineer to help you out, you have to some extent, be in a support plan that supports staff, right? So, and then architectural guidance, reviews. If you need a team to help you do that from inside of AWS, you can do that. And there is also like the technical account manager. They call them TAM, that can also assist you in your journey. Remember, your AWS is like your move to AWS is a journey, right? You start, and then you start growing, but AWS can grow with you. As you grow, AWS can also grow with you. And sometimes it speaks from support plans, because as a developer, you're just busy, you're maybe basic, you're doing, we are doing a lot of free tier here. Maybe as a developer, you start doing some serious stuff, but when you go to production, that's like business. You're doing a business. People are depending on you to host people are now depending on you. So you would want to make sure that you have you want the backbone of AWS, right? Which is where support plans comes in. So if you look at them, basic support plan, which is the one I've been using for the most part, and most of us use on this call, it's free. It's free. It does have its own limitation, but it's free. Billing, customer service, and account questions, you can do all that, right? It doesn't mean AWS will not answer you for some things, right? Just that, yeah, some services, and you can do service health dashboard. You can access all that. You can see documentation, white paper, support forum. All that should be free for you. It shouldn't be a big deal, right? We've seen, I think in one of the classes I showed you, Trusted Advisor. There's some things in Trusted Advisor that is free. just like 7 checks, right? But if you really wanted more checks, you would need a bigger support plan, right? Limitation, no technical support case, no phone or chat support. Nobody's going to guide you with architectural guidance. So at the level that we are right now, you can't go and tell AWS to come and guide you, right? Because we are just doing free. And then no enhanced trusted advisor. Okay. Before we go back to the support plan, just so you know, if I go to support, before we finish all of them, just so you know, if I do support and I go, like if I go to support, one thing you'll see immediately is you see that if you scroll up, you see that my support plan, I don't know if it's zoomed enough, but I think it is. But if you see my support plan is basic, and then I can actually come here and say I change. Maybe now I'm not a big boy, I'm spending more money now, and then I can basically it's all here. I think I did just put it in the slide just for you to see it, but all the information is here. What it means is that you can move from free to developer, and then you can see everything that you're entitled to once you move that tier, right? You can move from basic to developer to business, and then I mean, if you're like the big spenders in AWS, you can stay on enterprise support, right? Especially if you have like mission critical workloads that you're running. So you can also see, I mean, we can even stay on this page for you to look at this, but you can see response time is less than 30 minutes for business critical system down issues. Like your business critical system is down, AWS is going to attend to you in 30 minutes, right? But if you see this one, I mean, if you're the EC2 machine that I'm just testing with goes down, nobody will care if it's free plan, right? You can also see things like technical account manager. So there's like a technical account manager that handles your accounts, right? You can see, I think sometimes if you look at it for the most part, the response time is going to change. You can see enterprise is 30, 1 hour is for business. It just depends. Some people 30 minutes is good, but maybe for some business that you're running, maybe 30 minutes is like 1 hour is too long and you want 30 minutes, right? So you can see production system impaired, because when you create that ticket, you have to categorize them, and that's what will determine how fast AWS is going to respond to you. So enterprise will be everything in business plus this extra benefit that you're seeing, right? So, and it's very easy. You can just review your upgrade and move to the next level. But I'm not going to do that because I don't need it, right? So really, that's really what I have in the slide. I'm just going to show you, but just so you know, it's there in your account. It's there. Everybody starts basic, and you can build your way up if you need those services, right? So we've seen the basic support plan, developer support plan. It comes with a cost, so just know it's not free. All the basic support, and then plus some additional things. So email access to cloud support. You can have unlimited support case. You are not really limited to how many support case you can have. Response time is also, it might take AWS some time to answer you, but the guidance you can get them. System impaired, you can also get things from them, right? So if you look at the use case, if you're experimenting, so think about it right now. I can say I'm not doing much, but if I want to take this one level up, I'll pretty much move to a developer plan, right? So it doesn't have 24/7 support, no phone support, and then obviously limited architectural guidance, right? And you can also go into that page that we're looking at to see. For business support plan, greater than $100 per month, or tiered, right? So usually it's either the greater of. So if it's the greater of 100. So if it's 100 or the tiered based approach. So what it means is that which is greater. Usually most people will actually fall within the tier. So 0 to 10K, they will charge you the first 10%, and then depending on how much you make or like how much you're spending, the cost is going to increase. So it's not like a one fee. It depends. If you're actually spending more than 100, if your cost is going to be above 100, then you move into a tiered based approach, right? So everything that is included in developer support, but now there is really more things, right? 24/7 phone, email, chat, but one thing you should really pay attention to is really the response time, right? It's less than 24 hours, general, but if you go down like production system, it's less than an hour. Production system is impaired, less than 4 hours, right? And we saw it actually in where we're coming from, right? And then you can also see architectural guidance, third-party software support, use case, guidance also. And that brings us to like the enterprise, which is what I put green here. It's really for the big boys, right? But greater of 15,000, right? Or you can also move to the tiered-based approach, right? This one, you have like a designated AWS team assigned to you. It has many, like you can also do like the AWS countdown. So more or less like you're trying to do like a big event. You can get the support that you need for that to be rolled out. Okay. So when it comes to well architected and proactive reviews, you can have that done with AWS. So what it means is that if you really want to look at your system, you want to optimize it, or you want to more or less like have discussions to look at your technical, like where you stand, and some of the improvements that you can have that with the enterprise plan, right? You can see the response time we saw there is 15 minutes, less than 15 for like critical. Like if your production system is down, you can basically get all that. Mission critical systems, if you have like something that is very critical, most people will use enterprise support plan. Okay, just so you know, you can pretty much go into your account like I was trying to do, and look at all the different details and see. I think for the most part, the response time is one thing you should pay attention to, and then just know that the enterprise support is usually the one that has TAM, right? Those are the things you need to pay good attention to. Nobody's really going to be asking you like more or less like this cost, like the actual difference in cost, But it's also good you have an idea about it. Okay, so I also did put just a summary here for you to look at the different categories to see how they work. Right? If you're interested, you can also see. Um, yeah, so if you wanted to see all the different categories, you can also look at them, right? So if you look at the next slide, we're now going to be looking at more or less like the best practice that you can see. And some of them we've discussed them, because if you look at all the alerts you're creating, for example, when you are doing budgeting, when you are doing cost exploring, you need to use tags in a lot of places, right? Which is why it's good you have a tagging strategy, right? Because sometimes you're working on a small team, but when your organization begins to grow, you want like a place where you can see everything, right? So which is why a tagging strategy is good, and it's good you adopt that early. You need to set up budgets and alerts proactively, whether it's anomaly, whether it's budgets, whatever you want to set up, just set them up and make sure that you're keeping eyes on your cost. You know before they happen, right? And then you have to review. That's also an important thing. You have to continuously review, right? So last week you were spending average of 100, and then this week all of a sudden you're spending two. Sometimes it's something can change. I've seen cases where all of a sudden the developers, there was a change. We were not downloading more files, and that just we began to do more S3 calls, and that just increased the amount of money we're spending. The fix was basically to identify that there was a problem, right, in the application. So sometimes a bug can actually introduce this high cost that we're talking about. But if you're not reviewing, and you're not, you don't have like threshold in play that is in place, you will not notice it. So sometimes it's not about infrastructure problem. Sometimes it's also like problem within the application. Maybe something changed and the way you're doing things, right? Right size resource based on actual usage. So what that means is that, yeah, sometimes you have to look at many of the tools. I think in some different slides we've talked about like cost optimization, how you can actually work with some of the recommendations given to you. Sometimes, which is also one of the reasons why you have to create metrics, right? CPU utilization, RAM, like what memory that you're using. The whole idea is that if after like a month you're not using up to like 50% of the CPU, I mean that's like a good indication to downgrade that machine, right? And sometimes if you're also doing more, it's also like an indication you can also upgrade the machine. So all those things are there in the cloud. You just need to create the dashboards, create the metrics, create alerts that can help you know if you are wasting, or if you're basically operating in an optimized manner, right? Then choose the appropriate support plan for your needs, which is what we looked at. There are so many plans you can see, depending on what. I mean, for most of us here on this call, we basically do the basic plan, but there are many plans you can, depending on the stage you are in your growth, right, and your journey with AWS. So if I think about all the things we've looked at today, we looked at the calculator. Calculator, you don't need an AWS account to do that. You can basically just go to the UI and calculate, get an estimate of what something is going to cost you, right, in AWS. We talked about the billing dashboard, Cost Explorer for monitoring. We looked at the difference. Billing dashboard is basically like a summary. Cost Explorer is really where you drill down. Usage type, tags, service, all those kind of good things. You can filter them, right? We looked at cost allocation tag and how those tags are really the important tags that appears in the cost and usage report, right? So what it means is that if you have 1,000 tags, it's only the cost allocation tags that are important that would show up in those reports, right? And then we also looked at AWS budgets and billing alarms, and we said AWS budget is better because you have more flexibility as opposed to using like a CloudWatch billing alarm, right? We looked at cost anomaly detection for automatic spending alert. So it means, yeah, it can just basically look at your trend and it can help you pinpoint when something is really, really odd, right? And then we did service quota. which is everything in an account, there is a quota. It's also to protect you from accidental usage, right? So it means that sometimes you're basically going to AWS and say, yes, I really want this, I really want to increase, and then you can put in a limit increase request, and then that would happen, right? And then we saw how we could move from the basic support plan to like the enterprise plan, right, which is the highest plan you have inside of AWS, right? Obviously, right sizing strategies for cost optimization is there, and there's so many things you can do from there, whether it's using the compute optimizer or you're looking at some of the recommendations that you can find, right? So it's been awesome talking about this cost. It's just an early introduction, just so you know, it's not a beginner thing. This is a problem you will never, you continue to like. It's cost is something like you just want to make sure that you are spending wisely, right? If you're in the cloud, it's not an indication that you should just be wasting money. You need to spend and make sure that you're spending for the right things, right? So I think we've done pretty much well today. And it's a good time for me to stop the recording. I'll get the videos out so that you can always revise them if you want to, or it's going to be useful to for someone else that is seeing it for the first time. Cool.